Hello, this is Martin Gore from Depeche Mode.
Hi, this is Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode, and you are listening to
My Nerd World.
And it's Depeche Mode, the podcast. Welcome, devotees, and I thank you so much for checking out another episode. I wished that I wasn't starting this show in the same fashion as I was just a few weeks ago, but unfortunately, as I'm sure you are very well aware, tragedy has struck once again. This time not close to home here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I live, but in Utah, with the assassination of conservative commentator Charlie Kirk. I've mentioned before on the show my full-time job as a news talk radio show host. This tragedy hits close to home for me. Regardless of what you believe, we should be allowed to disagree. I mean, listen, it was not to be cliche or cheesy, but one of, the songs that put our beloved Depeche Mode on the map was People Are People, even though the band has distanced itself from that song, which I find rather interesting, when you consider the similarities with People Are Good as well, which I always looked at to be a modern companion to People Are People. But, that's what Martin wrote about, and people are people, so why should it be that you and I should get along so awfully? So, that being said, I got very little sleep last night, having to prepare to do my weekly radio show this morning, and I didn't want to let a week go by without doing a podcast, and I do have some things Depeche Mode related to share with you. This will be a relatively short episode, like it was a few weeks ago, and my apologies for that, but again, I enjoy doing the show, and I didn't want to go without doing a show this week. And it's relevant because, once again, Depeche Mode is a provider of comfort. I labeled this week's episode, DM and Tragedy, a friend in need. And they've always been there through their music. And they were this morning as well. So this week, I'd been listening to some albums that I really had not listened to from top to bottom for quite a long time. Starting with Playing the Angel. Playing the Angel came out at a time during my radio career. We were living in Grand Rapids, Michigan at the time, and it was a very rough sort of year. That year was really rough. And unfortunately, when you go through those times and you end up listening to something over and over again, often we end up being attached via nostalgia to whatever feelings that we had at the time when we were listening to that album. More recently, it was the Church's album Screen Violence. A few years ago, leading up to the passing of my best friend Drew, I was going through another very rough time in my life, mostly due to health concerns. I absolutely love that album by Church's, but I cannot listen to it. Because every time I do, I'm reminded of how I felt during that period of time. And the same thing has been true for Playing the Angel. That being said, I was incredibly pleased to discover that those feelings that had been attached to listening to that collection of songs had dissipated greatly. And I really found myself enjoying the album in a way that I hadn't since going all the way back to its release those many, many years ago. Although I will say, it's interesting with Playing the Angel because it is such a solid, 2/3 of the album. It's just the last handful of songs just do not resonate and grab me the way that the opening handful of songs do. I'm going to give it another listen, though, because it's not an album that I've revisited very often, apart from the singles, for the reasons that I mentioned. But again, I found myself enjoying it so much. I'm like, man, I really need to spend some more time with this. So I followed that up with Delta Machine, because that, too, being an album that I, listened to a lot during its release and the subsequent tour that followed. But I hadn't spent much time with it since then. And again, enjoyed the album immensely. So I was really looking forward to listening to Spirit, right? Obviously, much more familiar with that album considering that it's the last release prior to Memento Mori, and there was such a distance between Spirit and Memento Mori that even though it's not one of my favorite albums by any stretch, I had spent a lot of time with Spirit. That being said, this horrific event took place at this Utah University yesterday on Wednesday, and as I got into the car this morning, I needed to disconnect from all the coverage as I was staying up to date on everything that was going on and decided I needed to listen to some music on the way in. Spirit was the perfect album to listen to. Now, granted, I skipped around a bit, but the songs really, really resonated with me. Martin Gore's ability, along with Dave, with some of his songs, but Martin specifically, Martin Gore's ability to create these timeless tracks that are so relatable in as much as there's some ambiguity to them where you can, apply real world circumstances. And certainly the album itself was focused more on politics, the politics of the day, going back to 2016, 2017, but absolutely resonate with what's taking place right now. And specifically listening to Going Backwards, an incredible anthem in and of itself, that a song that I absolutely love, but just lyrically speaking, just hit home with what was going on and was providing the perfect catharsis as I was heading in to do my radio show. The Worst Crime, which was a song that oddly I didn't like at all when it was released, and it was like this switch was flipped at one point in listening to that song, and suddenly it became one of my favorites. I just absolutely love that track. And again, this morning, listening to it, I found myself singing in the car on the way in and thinking about what had transpired in the course of 15, 16 hours, and consuming all of the horrific news yesterday. And moving through, I listened to Poison Heart is one of my favorite. I mean, that's got to be in my top 15, close to top 10 favorite Depeche Mode songs. If just for the breakdown, we've been walking, down this cold and icy road. That moment in the song, it just goosebumps every time I hear it. But then getting to the final track of Fail, and again, just another track that resonated with me, that provided yet another example of Depeche Mode carrying me through a difficult moment in my life. In this case, one having to deal with the politics of the day and more closely aligned with what I do on a regular basis. And I wanted to share that with you today. I hate to be such a downer. I really do. And I struggled with sitting down to do the show today because I'm like, my gosh, man, I don't want to come on here so negative, but I also don't want to not do a show for those that expect it every week, because I know how disappointing it can be when you're anticipating something that you enjoy and it's part of your routine. So, with that, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share this with you once again on the show. And so just thank you. And as I typically close the show out, I'll do that again today. I do have a few other things that I want to share with you, and do want to cover some listener feedback that rolled in this week. But take a moment and just hug your loved ones and those around you, and let's heed the words of Martin Gore. On both people are good. On both lyrically relating to people are good, and remember, there's evil in the world, but a lot of times people are just horribly misguided, and certainly, the words of People Are People. For as cheesy and sort of poppy as I know Martin has complained about that song, it certainly does speak to our times, and something that I think everybody could go and take a cue from in these very, very trying times. So we're just a few days out from the on sale for Depeche Mode M. It was announced that it will be featured on some IMAX screens. I do not believe that they have released exactly where the film will be shown yet. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead and, while I am in the middle of recording, let me go ahead and take a look. I'm heading over. I'm on the website now, and yeah, it does not appear yet as if they have, they have not released exactly where, because these will be limited screenings on October 28th. I still am anticipating, and I have no basis of interest. I have no basis of fact for this. It's just my gut feeling. I'm still anticipating that for the marking the occasion of the on sale next week, that they'll release in the end as a single. And it would make sense because, your singles typically, in the past, I don't know how true this is anymore, but typically they would come out on Tuesdays. And the 17th is Wednesday, so it would make sense that there would be a final push to get everybody to go purchase the tickets online by promoting in the end as a single. This could be also just me attempting to will it into be, because I absolutely love that song. I listen to it every single day, the copy that I shared with you on the show previously. So I will, I've penciled in to do a special bonus show next week. I don't know if it will be the show of the week or if I'll just do a shorter one to mark the on sale date. And certainly if in the end it does drop, or those other 3 tracks that we've been waiting for, just another reason for me to pop on and share my thoughts with you. So we will see how that shakes out around the on sale date for the Depeche Mode film, which I'm incredibly excited to go see, as we can begin to sort of count down the days for its big screen release. And with that, let's go ahead and get to your listener feedback this week. I did get a handful of comments from you. It's always appreciated. You can always leave a comment up on YouTube or email me, talkshowNerd@gmail.com. First, we hear from a Tiny House Mike, who says this: "Thank you, John, for keeping us devotees in the loop. I stumbled across your podcast when there were rumors of Depeche Mode working on a new album, which we now know was Memento Mori. I've been a loyal fan ever since. I remember when I was 7 years old, spending the week at my aunt's house that summer of '87, and my older cousins were listening to Depeche Mode on vinyl. The song that got me hooked was Satellite. I remember hearing that deep bass beat with all types of different sounds. I was an instant fan from that point forward. I was lucky enough to grow up with other Depeche Mode fans near me, so I was always being exposed to their favorite music. My first Depeche Mode album was Violator. Still my favorite to this day, but I find myself listening to Black Celebration and Memento Mori in its entirety. Yeah, I do as well. I'm lucky enough to be able to listen to music while I'm at work. I've really gravitated towards those 2 albums. Once in a while, I'll mix it up and listen to the other albums in no specific order. I'm looking forward to the new M film coming out soon. My 11-year-old daughter and I will be in the theater watching this film. My daughter's favorite album is Black Celebration. We had a road trip from Tennessee to California a few years ago, and we listened, and all we listened to was complete Depeche Mode albums. Thank you for letting me share my experience, and thank you for what you do." And to that, Mike, thank you for that and the kind words. Going back to what I said last week and what I mentioned earlier, listening to Depeche Mode again as I did when I was younger, and that was the albums in their entirety, as I've done this week. I want to trend back to doing that, not just with Depeche Mode, but other albums as well. our attention is so fragmented now, and we have so many options to be entertained, and I think it's amazing the power of Depeche Mode's music, obviously, been a focus on the show this week, but to be able to go back and listen as we did when we were younger and not segmenting our music listening. I mean, and to each their own. I'm sure I'm going to continue to do that, and I do. But I had really gotten away from listening to the albums in their entirety, like I would go and watch a movie. And returning to that trend, for lack of a way to better do it, habit, right, has proved to be incredibly enjoyable. Sherry Bell writes this. I say you name your new wheels Martin. Slick, totally cool, dark, assuming the car is kind of black and not without its drama. Seems like Martin G to a T. Just a thought. Enjoyed the podcast. All right, so I got my car back from the shop. It's a 2023 Kia Stinger. The color of the car is Panthera metal. So it's black, but it's not black. It's more like a gunmetal gray. It's black, but it's, I think I described it last week on the show. If you had candy apple red, but you made candy apple red black, that's what the color of the car is. Because I would never go and purchase a straight black car. This, however, in the sun looks really, really cool. And I was calling it Black Celebration, but unfortunately my wife vetoed it. She didn't like calling it Black Celebration. She likes Depeche Mode, not as much as I do, and isn't as sentimental along those lines as I am. So we've been kicking around ideas. We decided we needed to name it a female name. I could go with Lillian, I suppose. Or any of the different names from Breathe, right? At this point in time, we're calling it Trinity. And that's based off of The Matrix, a film that I love. I still haven't completely landed on that yet. I still like Black Celebration, but I guess I can internally call it Black Celebration. But we name all of our cars. So the car that my son inherited from me, well, he purchased it from me. I called it Junior because I'm a massive Dale Earnhardt Jr. fan because I'm a NASCAR fan. So thank you for the suggestion. I like it, but I think I'm going to give it a female name. So I'm still working on it, Sherry Bell. But thank you for listening, and I appreciate you adding your commentary into the mix. Lastly, James Rigby writes this. To answer your question, how I've been spending my time listening to Depeche Mode over this week, I've been listening to my playlists on my phone on my music player app. The best Depeche Mode for each decade, starting with the 80s, then the 90s, then the aughts, and then the 2010s and 2020s, because obviously we only got one album so far in the 2020s. These playlists are made up of my favorite songs from each album in that decade, or decades in the case of the fourth playlist. Awesome. And thank you for sharing that, James. Not everybody takes me up on my offer to have you suggest how it is you're listening to Depeche Mode, so I appreciate you going and doing that. So, as I mentioned, a relatively short episode. I'm going to record a Star Wars episode, but it's going to be much shorter than this. So, thank you again for allowing me to express things outside of Depeche Mode, but I hope I made it relative enough that you still enjoyed the podcast this week. So I will be back next week. Hopefully it's under much better circumstances. But before I let you go, I just want to remind you that you love Depeche Mode, but if you also read science fiction, I hope you'll treat yourself, a family member, or a friend with science fiction. I wrote a science fiction space opera series set in the future where air and space flight culture has replaced car culture. It was inspired in part by Depeche Mode, the world we live in and life in general, life in the so-called space age. I decided to have Depeche Mode play a large part in the underlying themes of the story, which is easy, love, right? There's a romance in the story. The main character himself is a Depeche Mode fan. At a time, 2172 was the year in which the story takes place. But I made it so that the music through the 80s, through the 2000s, is nostalgic and popular among the characters of the story. And they do feature references to Depeche Mode, both indirect and direct, along with other bands of their time and modern day, all while telling an exciting sci-fi space opera saga. It's funny, if you go back and I was doing a reread of the first book, because, yes, I'm one of those authors that rereads his own books. And they're interesting. The books are interesting snapshots into the music that I was into and what Depeche Mode songs I was listening to at the time. It's pretty interesting. At least for me it is, and I wrote the book, so why wouldn't it be? Book 1 is described as follows. It's 2172. Flight culture has replaced car culture, and 2 of Earth's largest corporations now supply the planet with the technology and fuel to make air and space flight available to everyone. Taft Guardia spends his weekends at an abandoned flying field, racing through the skies with his 3 best friends and the girl that he longs to be with, Keitha Morrow. After receiving a mysterious message from her deceased aerospace engineer father, Keitha and Taft make a shocking discovery. With Earth facing a great disaster, a ruthless and power-hungry enemy emerges. Unwittingly, Taft, Keitha, and their crew are thrust into the middle of humanity's fight for survival and future among the stars. It's a fast-paced, fun, action-packed, epic science fiction adventure without any sort of agenda. So, again, if you like science fiction, and you like your science fiction to be epic, filled with some romance, cool technology, a lot of action as well, and they're easy reads too. This is not hard science fiction. It's borderline fantasy. EMBARK is perfect for you. I wrote the series for adults, but I also made it age appropriate for any children 11 and older in terms of the content. Nothing will be offensive in there beyond the violence, which is on par with what you would get from your typical Star Wars fare. So I hope if you haven't already, that you'll pick up EMBARK Book 1 today. It's available in hardcover, paperback, ebook, Kindle Unlimited, and audiobook, all at Amazon.com. Just search for EMBARK and Jon, Jon Justice. Again, that wraps up the show this week. Thank you so much for spending some time. I appreciate it. And I hope wherever you are, that you're happy, you're healthy, you're safe. Say a prayer for our planet. Crying out loud, right? Say a prayer for the world we live in and life in general. All right. And I'll talk to you guys next week. Have a great one. Bye.
Hello, this is Martin Gore from Depeche Mode.
Hi, this is Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode, and you are listening to
Depeche Mode, the podcast on
My Nerd World.